value creation is the most overused word in private equity because as private equity people, we got operating partners will value create the hell out of this thing, right? It's not, right? It is really that level. It's understanding there's always rooms to improve businesses.
Yes.
It's not venture capital, it's private equity. It's the Private Equity Funcast. Pour yourself a drink and have a seat.
Hello, Funcast fans. We are back with some old friends of the firm to talk about tech diligence, especially in the age of AI. Our longtime due diligence partners, Code & Co., Dan, Lukas, and the newest member of the team, Kirby. Welcome. Before we get started today, I do want to give you a little surprise here. This is the first email that introduced you to me from CC Zhang, the original email.
That is so sweet.
I think there's an interesting company on here that we didn't call on the reference sheet. As a matter of fact.
Let's take a look. Oh, this is how I met Code & Co. right here, Corsair Capital.
There you go.
You guys had me.
Nice.
So I guess we should have called the reference. So Josie, we didn't call all the references, right?
Amazing. Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. It's been such a great relationship. So let's talk about how you guys, we know you. How did you get started in doing this business? How did you two meet? How did you decide we want to be in the due diligence business for private equity firms? Because that's a very specific thing.
So yeah, I mean, Dan and I, we've been friends for a long time. We actually had our own respective startups.
But wait, is it like a Spinal Tap? Like you met when you were 5 years old and you're singing you get the song, you sing.
And we're like early 20s,
She's not
right?
on the 519.
Early 20s, Berlin startup guys.
Meeting at a venture capitalist office we both pitched at. With two different companies and startups.
Did you both get invested?
Both got invested and both failed miserably with the companies.
Yeah, you got to have one. You got to have one in your
It was the first one, indeed.
But then also, I think this is one of the reasons we decided that eventually then when we founded Code & Co., we didn't want to take any external capital. That was like one of the core reasons, right? That we wanted to really build something.
You should never take capital
ourselves. Yeah.
You should never
private
take capital.
Podcast.
Just wait until you want to sell the whole thing. We don't need to deal with that.
So that was actually for us was a really good learning. And then in between the startups failing and then founding Code & Co., we did a lot of different things. So for instance, I worked as a software developer at ThoughtWorks. Dan, he was a director of product at Rocket Internet in Berlin. But then, we were ready to do something together, but we weren't really sure what we wanted to do. So we just started working together. And given that we're both developers, we had something that we could capitalize on being our development work, right? So in the beginning, started doing some dev work. We, for instance, built a large mobile app and sold it to VW, which was amazing because this was our funding from the get-go.
And a good company to fund. I'm a big VW man.
They have some problems right now, but for Germany, I hope this is going to get sorted.
Well, my college suite mate, Mark McNabb, he negotiated the settlement with the United States on behalf of Volkswagen.
Oh, wow.
He was the COO, yeah. Oh, yeah. Longtime partner. Now, all of this behind us, the newest member of the team. So how'd you guys meet Kirby and how'd you rope him into being part of the Code & Co team?
I mean, we've been super fortunate to do this for a long time, right? Founded in 2016. We've done hundreds of DDs. Last year we did, just to quantify this a bit, last year we did probably like 200 DDs. This year we hope to double it, knock on wood and stuff. And we've been, super privileged to work across sectors, geos, industries. We've been serving, people like you for a long time across the globe.
Yeah.
Exactly. And but time zones do exist, let me tell you. And so after a full day of work in Europe, we have offices in Berlin, in London, in Paris. But after a full day of work,
London, Paris, Munich, everybody talk about pop music.
There you go.
Half the people have no idea.
There you go.
Shazam can't even pick that song up anymore.
So, after a full day of work, time zones do exist. The excitement to join a workshop for a West Coast deal at like midnight or 2 a.m. in the morning is, less than stellar. And as such, we wanted for a long time have a dedicated team in the US. And we're super fortunate to find Kirby at a DD, but you can tell the story yourself. It's one of the points here in 2020, and we now have an office in New York, a team, and we're excited. Who are you, Kirby?
So, overall, it's funny to see this email because Code & Co always includes their case studies, and I'm seeing this deal right here. It was Corsair Capital, Kansas City. I was leading product at a fintech company, and these two German guys walk in to do this thing called due diligence. It was my first experience with it, and I thought it was so fascinating. So as we went through the product and I was talking about all the things I was so passionate about there, it was cool to see like this is this guy's job. They get to come, they get to listen, they get to ask questions. I didn't know at the time that they were also being detectives, trying to figure out where the skeletons were and things like that. Because in the workshop you don't feel that vibe if it's going right. But after that,
the whole point.
I know. It worked on me.
We don't want you to see it coming.
The pixie dust. I was like, oh, of course, I'd love to show you what's in the closet over here. But the reality was that after that, I had followed up with them. We stayed in contact. I had startup that got acquired as an add-on from K1, and after that, there was some more free time. And so I followed up, and I got the chance to be a senior advisor. Their framework's always evolving. But after a campfire in Cape Cod, after the AGC conference, I get the chance to agree to join to be the North American lead. So
exactly. It only took us 5 years or so of begging. Yeah, 6 years. Yeah.
But that's kind of one where I can see why it was needed, because they've already been doing North American work, but we've been busy since day one. So we already have a team on the ground, and we're actively hiring more.
You're
people.
right. Time zones exist, and people like to see people face to face too. Zoom works for a bunch of things, but time zones, you're right, do exist, and it's nice to be able to parachute in if you need to parachute in.
And for me, it's a really cool time to see the company. As like DD, when I first met them, maybe it was a check the box. I don't know. I really felt like it was different then, but now in this era of AI and AI defensibility, it's shifted left. And what was like a quality of earnings now we're looking at a quality of tech, quality of AI. And it's cool that Code & Co can be engaged pre-LOI and collaborating to have a point of view early on. So I feel like the work is more important than ever. And selfishly, I get to learn more than ever.
Yeah, it always should be. Part of the problem with it being a checkbox item is, from the classic, if you're buying a manufacturer or a healthcare company, tech is often checkbox. It's like, do you have InfoSec? Do you have disaster recovery plan? You probably have a commercial product you're using to run the platform. So it's not doing diligence on that stuff. That kind of drifted over into the software side as people who traditionally in the private equity bought hard assets. Now they're buying software companies. To them it was like quality of earnings, right? Like, oh, we do this thing and it's a checkbox item and it should be fine. It's either binary, and the quality of earnings is often, it is binary, but with tech diligence, it's not. It's never binary, unless it's something like crazy. Like I said, you're running an ERP software platform on a Nintendo Switch. We get it. Like out of the box, that's not going to work. But in general, right? It depends, which is very different than, so they just checked it off because they couldn't do anything about it anyway.
I've been told tales like 10 years ago, you guys, it used to be called IT due diligence, and I'm sure that's when the checkbox is. But you guys, how's it evolved?
Yeah, you said it yourself, right? It has shifted left dramatically. It's become more important, given, unless we have sufficient confidence or clients has sufficient confidence in the company's ability to exist, and not be the next Claude feature. There's no point in looking at scalability, architecture, cybersecurity, and all that fun stuff, right? So I think for us, it's been a very rewarding time in many ways, because as you said, the rate of innovation has never been faster. So also our rate of learning has never been faster. And innovation has become such a quickly moving target. It's insane. And it's so fun. And as such, today our work begins with an outside-in analysis, looking for web signals and stuff like that. And identifying signals, but given it's not yet based on a lot of evidence, it's signals, right? And then we want to make those proper insights and that hopefully match our client's investment thesis. And we get to do this via workshops, document analyses, code scans, and whatnot. And phase one is typically now top 3 items of ICs is AI, and then guess what?
Shocking.
A bit of AI.
I'm going to guess. Let me guess. AI?
Yes, sir. Indeed. And as such, we get to look at how defensible is a company. Do they know how to play defense? Maybe even better than the Lakers. I know you're a huge Lakers fan. Oh,
yeah. So I can tell you a fun story about this. One of our partners at a prior fund that we're in business with, nice enough guy, huge Lakers fan, also from LA, wore his Kobe Bryant shirt to Boston Garden to a Celtics game.
Oh, that's brave.
He had to go, and he's not a brave guy. He had to go throw out the Kobe shirt and buy himself a Larry Bird shirt in order for him not to get killed at the Boston Garden.
Curb the Bird.
Yeah,
that's his nickname.
That's my GitHub handle.
GitHub handle.
Really? Yes. Larry Bird. He's a legend in Boston. All right, so this is I think an interesting piece of this that it's worth talking about. I think it started as IT diligence just because initially IT was just the back office crap in any company you bought, right? Mm-hmm. I'd make the argument, now that's certainly not true of software companies because their product is software, right? But I defy you to find any manufacturer, healthcare company, I don't care what, they wrote some software themselves. It may just be ERP reports, but they're in the software business, right? And I think that's one of the biggest areas going forward that's going to be a challenge is as AI makes it easier to customize these things, a lot of companies that aren't in the software business are going to realize, yeah, you are. You're in the software business, my friend.
100%.
I think it probably even speaks to how Code & Co's evolved. Overall, what was maybe just straight software due diligence.
Yep.
Now there's hardware diligence that's done. There's tech enabled, more like we're buying software and stringing it together. And in that space, there's one risk, but also tons of value creation, not to use an overused word, but basically how can, like, as former founders, operators, what our team culture is, go in and work with those teams to make it more efficient or hopefully make it more valuable. And that's something I think is pretty cool.
You know how I feel about the PE partner saying value creation, because usually we're so full of ourselves.
We have to code switch a little bit.
You guys are you guys actually adding value as opposed to the PE partners. We don't add a whole lot of value. Let's be honest about this. It's the people we know. Right? Exactly.
Speak for yourself.
Yes, this is comments made by the partners at Parker Gale reflect only Parker Gale partners and none of the other partners in the PE business.
We need confidence in the team's ability. They're not just the next cloud feature, ultimately, right?
Yep.
And two, do you have the foundations in place to innovate and things like that? And only once there's sufficient comfort, we're going to play offense, right? We're going to look at, we're going to do the whole thing from product and product operations, roadmap, architecture, infrastructure, scalability, open source, cybersecurity, and all these things. And also understand, hey, not only how resilient are you, but what can you do? Are you deeply embedded in your customer workflows, right? Maybe do you have access to proprietary self-renewing data, which could be a flywheel, and informed data, machine learning features or AI features. So I think ultimately what a lot of people are sleeping on today still is the miracle of SaaS is potentially dead, right? Or at least it's, severely, I don't think necessarily it's dead, but at least it's challenged, it's changes. You will have deeply unprofitable users. You will have deeply unprofitable user flows and workflows unless you embrace AI, and that's the technical implementation thing also, right? Talking about MLOps, I don't want to bore you or the audience with technical details here, but you want to make sure you use AI where it shines, right?
Of course,
and just don't throw tokens at a problem, because one, hallucination, and two, cost, right? That's a big issue. So you want to make sure that you're deeply focused on, and this is back to the product thing you mentioned before, right? You want to be really good at discerning where can AI add value, and is my architecture designed to be malleable? Can it evolve with whatever next trend may happen, right? So I think this is ultimately what we're trying to understand. So speed to insight matters, right?
100%. Yep.
So our goal is to be the fastest when it comes to delivering insights. We can start from the outside in. We can source, ideally we talk to the team. Next best person to talk to is potentially someone who used to work there, right?
Of course,
so we can talk to them via LinkedIn and get some first insights. We call it Lightning DD. We're trying to understand, signals, identify signals on the web. And this is also where we use agents too, right? We can suddenly browse the entire internet, right? And come back with data and insights. So, but obviously since it's not backed by evidence, it's signals. It's not yet insights, right? Then hopefully we can get access to the team, and you guys say, look, let's do a first discovery session with the team, and we can do a product demo, architecture walkthrough, things like that, and then come back, substantiate our signals, and develop them into first insights. And then once we have sufficient comfort in the team's ability to have they embraced AI, is there something that could be a moat? Is there something that's that we like? Then we can go deeper and do the whole maybe still checkmarky thing. Is it scalable enough, right? Is it reasonably secure? That's okay. It's irrelevant.
That's a great question, though. So let's poke into that question, because we run into two problems. I see two problems, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to talk about a friend of mine. I think you guys know, Alan Williamson. My argument is, at the end of time, if a bomb hits this Earth or an asteroid and destroys it, the only thing left alive are
what about shareholder value?
His code and cockroaches. That's it. like he writes it so which is good. But the reality is that I don't think most of software companies always know what their scalability target is. They don't know how many users they're going to have. They don't know how many per second. They don't know. I mean, we used to live by this stuff, right? Because originally you had CPU, disk, and memory. Those are the three things you had to worry about, right? Then you had to start worrying about networking, right? Now we have to worry about like AI latency, but literally it was a fairly simple process we could sort of figure out. I think everybody today either underscales or they overscale. You're not Facebook. You're not Twitter. So I don't need this giant back end of automated servers spinning up and down, right? But that's a really fun thing to build, right? So I want to poke into the lightning thing for a second, but this is such an interesting topic. Do you ever find yourself in situations where they just overbuilt? Like it's really good, but they just way overbuilt.
Yeah, for sure.
AI maxing's real.
I think a good example is like we ordered a company that do like, I don't know, very basic e-commerce stuff. And there was like the most sophisticated architecture we have seen. There was like, you looked at their infrastructure architecture diagram and it reads like an AWS catalog pretty much.
Oh
right?
my God. Yeah.
So it's like,
there's somebody who was in love with AWS.
exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like, and they didn't need it, right? It was like, but it was, what they did technically was boring, right? So they made their job more exciting.
And great CTO, by the way. He was knowledgeable. He had a lot of expertise. He just got bored on a job, we think, So,
but that creates its own problems, right?
oh yeah, for sure. Like
Huge.
I think the best software is the one that solves problems when they arrive. So not one, and potentially sometimes even once they have arrived, right? I mean, you remember the fail whale at Twitter, right? For example, right? That's okay. You want to start with potentially a monolith. Why? Because it's simple, right? You have UI, business logic, and data persistence in one deployment. That's straightforward stuff. It's simple, right? And if you hit your scaling limit, well, you might carve out, in this case, I think it was a search function or so, right? Carve it out into a dedicated microservice. Suddenly you have the whole problem of, scaling up and down specific microservices and managing intra-service communications, things like that. The beauty, however, is you can build dedicated solutions for specific problems in whichever language is the best right now, and architecture is the best right now. This is great, right? It's always a trade-off, I think. And this is the stuff that helps us get out of bed in the morning, if I'm being honest, right? We get to work with smart people like you and the other side of the table, companies, right? Because, unless they've built something awesome and impressive, you wouldn't be talking to them as a private equity fund, right?
Well, except sometimes we do run into that is amazing you did that. Like we can't invest in it, but it's amazing. Like I can't believe you built that.
And this is why you do diligence, right?
Yeah, it's
ultimately,
insane, right?
And we just, we're looking for signals that we have confidence in the team's ability to go with the times. And I mean, 5 years ago or 10 years ago, it was mobile. And then at some point it was cloud. And then it became this maybe microservices envy of hey, why, should we stay boring? We can do like a fancy microservices architecture and run Kubernetes clusters left and right and, possibly not needed. In some situations, it might be needed. Fantastic, right? And this is the kind of stuff that we love. This is diligence ultimately. And this is what Lukas said in the beginning. The DD, what they've found very often is more like, this is okay, and there's a massive red flag. We're like, no, the devil's in the detail here, right? And,
that's the problem.
Right? And we are here to discern, understand, do we have confidence in your ability to make good decisions, right? So that, and I'm quoting you from the last time we spoke here in this podcast, to grow revenue, right? Or expand your margins, so save cost and manage risk. Like ultimately, this is what entrepreneurship is when you look at technology.
We are going to do this as an episode. And I didn't have the heart to tell you that I added optionality as the fourth between risk, cost, and revenue. Because I think optionality is and we'll save it for that time. But here, there's two really key points that you talked about that I'd love to dig into there. So first, there's I always want to explain to people SaaS, because SaaS is both a payment model, right? I'm paying the user, I'm paying the software vendor a license per user or per something, right? Per drink, whatever. There's SaaS, you're running it on your data center or hardware for me. So I'm not in the hardware business, right? And there's the multi-tenant SaaS that is, as a user, I don't want it to be multi-tenant. I don't care. I'm assuming that you want it to be multi-tenant on the other side because it's more cost effective to do that, right? So one of the problems we've run into is people misunderstand SaaS. If you are a software company with significant data and expertise, we believe that's a huge value now in the age of AI that may not have been even a couple of years ago, because part of the problem we have with some of our companies is they're really, really good under the covers. Like a lot of these system of record, they don't have the time for the analytics on top of them to draw that data out. They just didn't, So here's an amazing, funny, you all know Nori because she was part of the BizCom deal.
Sure.
Nori grabbed the entire Jira ticket history from one of our portfolio companies, dumped it into Claude, and did a whole analysis herself on where we're standing on tickets, and it wasn't bad.
That's amazing. Yeah,
you couldn't do that 2 years ago. You couldn't even do it probably a year ago, right? But we're sort of starting to get to that point. So, do you guys believe in this concept of if they've got data and expertise at the data layer, that's going to be a moat, or do you think that moat goes away with AI just because data is everywhere? Oh, here we go.
My take on this is that...
Do we need to do this like the Newlywed Game where they go in the soundproof booth and you
spar back?
We asked Kirby the top 5 answer to...
Because you guys said earlier, you said, maybe 2025 is the time to experiment with AI, and 2026 is the time we should really be optimizing and lean in so you don't get left behind. I've worked at a fair amount of companies where we would tell people we have proprietary data, but I knew we couldn't do anything with it because the architecture wouldn't allow us to get there. And so the things that I'm seeing that are most important inside this diligence is that we all know where the world is now. If we want the data to be an asset that's truly valuable, what is the engineering team doing in the architecture to make that available? And then if people are then tuning that to then use it in AI models, how are they doing it in a cost-effective way? Okay. And so some things are still the same. Like you still want to look at the unit economics of the business. There's more variables now that we look at. Of course, yeah. It was cloud compute. Now it's like cloud plus AI. And then if you get more users, do you understand, is that actually going to erode your margins?
Of course.
And these are the things that I think are most interesting, that some things are the same, some things are the same.
Right.
But
I think ultimately, no matter how you define SaaS, whether it's browser usage or hyperscaler, multi-tenant deployment, or recurring billing, right? Ultimately, the miracle of SaaS was zero marginal cost, or close to zero marginal cost, and new accounts and new seats, right? This was fun. It was easy, and there was a high degree of cost efficiency. And what I mentioned before, this doesn't exist anymore unless you do it right? And this is where data is so important, right? You have this, layer of managing AI ultimately, right? And this is what I meant before by MLOps. You need to have a process, a technical process in place, a pipeline in place that uses AI where it shines, and hopefully also manages costs, because otherwise you're just going to set data centers on fire pretty much and burn through tokens, and that's not what SaaS. This is not SaaS anymore.
That's what we're going to do in the economy, unfortunately, because your average user now is going to just type it into ChatGPT versus Google search, right? Now, they're going to get a better answer because I have to scroll through so many pages on Google. Do we use Google? No. I never use Google. I'm a DuckDuckGo, person anyway.
That's cool.
I'm definitely.
He was baiting you in that answer. He's like, yes. Do you have a Yahoo email address?
I have a CompuServe email address. I have a Prodigy email address. If you want to do this, I can go pretty far back because I'm way old. Exactly.
He's checking your receipts back there.
So there is the key to all this, though, right? It's you got to have your gross margin. You got to know what it is. You got to know whether you're going to, send yourself out of business by not mapping this stuff. But here's the problem. Right now, all these vendors are selling, and by vendors I mean the LLM vendors. They're selling dollars for quarters.
Yes, sir.
Right. So you might as well spend as much as you possibly can. That's number one. Number two, I don't think the people at the layer here understand what they're spending. Right. So this is I think what's going to crush them. They barely understand. How many folks here's a good question. You've done an audit, right? And you're talking through it, and they're running Azure, they're running on Google Cloud, or maybe they're running Oracle Cloud or AWS, right? How many times do you see that they're overspending on their AWS, or to your point, over productizing? They bought too many, AWS has got one of these. It's like they're going through your Trader Joe's, or I'll take one of those, right? How often do you see that?
This happened this week. We're like, why do you have 3 clouds? You don't need 3 clouds.
I think, their businesses are, reasonably scaled, or there needs to be a sort of, massive resilience, or even there's some, you want to prevent vendor dependence and things like that. So there are reasons for multi-cloud deployments, right? But for most companies, they're not, right? Yeah. And to give you a couple of examples, I think one of the...
But that's a well-known, before you start, it's a well-known thing. We're 10 years into the cloud, right?
Yeah, exactly.
There are plenty of people that can help you tell how much you're spending, or you're re-architected. And you're telling me, which I totally believe because we see it all the time, you're still running into companies that have no idea.
Ultimately, I think almost every company we look at, you can optimize from a cloud spend perspective. And I think that's one of the... I think one of the most straightforward value creation levers post-signing, post-SPA or post-close is optimizing cloud spend. And it's also something you can outsource. There's external partners that can help you beautifully.
Yeah.
To give you one example, one case study, we did this deal in the marketing tech space. This was a couple of years ago, and they had a pretty massive scale. It was a multi-cloud deployment, and we ran a hyperscaler cost optimization audit afterwards. And this is an outlier, to be fair, right? But it's true numbers. So Lukas, keep me honest. But we identified cost saving potential of $6 million per year right? And it was...
I'm not surprised, which is hilarious. Now, what size company was it from a revenue standpoint? Just to give because people...
It was not maybe 50 to 100 million ARR or something like that. It was not that big, actually. It was big, but not huge, right? So it was it did move the needle quite a bit, right?
100%, right? So, but you would think it's you would think, is $6 million a lot for $100 million company? And the answer is, if you know, 80%,
it
it is. It's huge. Like
Yeah.
Amazon is not that expensive
Right.
if you know how to use it. It's not. I mean, it's not cheap. I'm not trying to say Bezos has a giant yacht and did his whole wedding thing in Italy. I get it. That's not free, but yeah.
I think the same thing is true though as we shift as we're in this AI age. Is that you now have to look at cloud compute, but you're also looking at AI spend.
Yes,
And
it's
in this
complex.
one, the common piece is organizational maturity. It starts with the leadership. It goes into how it's implemented. But did they prioritize the time to find good unit economics? And if they haven't, it's a value creation opportunity. And if they have, that's playing offense. They could probably optimize it more. They've obviously identified something that's powerful that they want to do it. And one of the things that I like that Dan that brings up whenever we're looking at companies is where they've put AI on a feature and they're losing money on the feature because they haven't put the telemetry in to know what the value of that feature is. And they also don't know that it's probably could have been solved in a different way. So I like that that's now part of our playbook as we're going through things.
What's interesting about that is that's such a complex issue. So we have a very old portfolio company that's years ago. Nice guys, great company. And they built a mobile application because the customer said they would be interested to have a mobile application. Now, I know you're going to think this is a story. Oh God, the whole thing went off the rails. So they built this mobile app. Nobody used it. Like less than 1% of the customers. But some huge percent of the customers cited it in references to other potential customers as the reason they bought. They loved the idea of running on the phone. They just never bothered to do it, but they loved it. They showed it to all their friends. And it was one of those things like, okay, technically we lost money on the engineering side building a mobile app, but we made it back on the marketing side.
100%. I mean,
I think
go to market is a thing also, right?
It
I mean,
is,
we see so much fun stuff. Like we had audited this one company once that had a really good into enterprise customers. And if you look at enterprise customers in at least in Europe, probably the same in the US, there's governance institutions like purchasing departments and things like that, right?
Yes.
And so you talk to the department that wants to use this software, but they have to go through purchasing, right?
Yes.
So they kind of strategize with you, right? And there were instances in that case where this company had a very specific ESG certificate, and very specific one, super edge casey. And then as part of the RFP, they said, we as the department, they just told the purchasing department, we demand that you have this specific certificate. Plus, and they were ISO certified as well. So you need to have two certificates, and one of them needs to be this weird ESG certificate. God. So it's literally the only company you could choose, right? So that was such a fun thing. Yeah.
Right,
well, that's funny because we're people forget I'm old enough that we dealt with purchasing departments selling to enterprise customers. I mean, I covered Eastman Kodak for Ingress way back when, and those were the, you'd be perfectly set up. The prototype went well. They were ready to buy, and the purchasing would look at it and go, "Not Oracle. We got a standard agreement with Oracle or Sybase or something else, and or we only pay this price, or you have to have this other crazy thing." We used to in the United States. There was Ada was the programming language. Anything that went to the government had to be written in Ada. You know, it's like
you could go in here in Chicago. I think that's an Ada shop.
It is, yeah. They're an Ada shop.
So on the marketing piece, the joke internally is that a year ago, you see these SIMs, and now every SIM that's seen is an AI company. So everyone has rebranded to an AI company. If they are or they're not, it's for fine product marketing side. One of the things that I think is interesting when we go in and we start working, having that entrepreneurial mindset is where somebody's not utilizing AI, and we can give a recommendation and a plan where like, here's the most limited version you can do to actually have a little bit of AI branding that's true. Mm-hmm. Could be like an audit feature you have where we say, hey, we run that through AI to audit check. Their code was perfectly fine to do it. But just a little check on that allows that product marketing to be true. And I think just a sprinkle sometimes is okay. Yeah. Because then it's like true.
Yeah. I mean, I think the beauty is also like, if you look at, again, devil's in the detail, right? It's perfectly okay to start easy. Like if you just want to integrate Claude or OpenAI via an API and kind of a little bit of UI, pixie dust on top, that's fine in the beginning. Whether you are then an AI native company, according to your investment banker, or the IM, that's to be seen. But I think it's easy. It's good to kind of fake it till you make it, and then. But ideally, and this is again the fun part of our job, we need to understand: is there a credible path towards becoming, utilizing AI in a more embedded, more reliable, more predictable, way? Whether that's internally in terms of efficiency enhancement, whether it's externally as an upsell or something like that, right? So. You might want to. You might start easy, and that's okay, like MVP mindset and stuff. But it's probably not going to be the end game, right?
Yeah. And to me, like we talk a lot about diligence. That's a lot of red flag up front. Like what we're trying to avoid. The fun part of the job is the value creation, because we are entrepreneurs ourselves. We go in there, we're working post deal, and it's oftentimes the creativity to say like, how can we improve the value of this asset? And sometimes it's just practical things to say, put this in here. Here's the engineering implementation for it. It's not going to cost a lot, but overall, it's going to probably help you win deals. And to me, like that's a fun part of the job.
Yeah, and the hysterical part about that is value creation is the most overused word in private equity, because as private equity people, we got operating partners, we'll value create the hell out of this thing, right? It's not, right? It is really that level. It's understanding there's always rooms to improve businesses,
Yes.
right? And we all come from different perspectives. So it's not that the teams are not smart or experienced or whatever. I've just seen thousands of deals. So I've seen it done thousands of ways. So I may have mostly they're stupid ideas, but at least it gives them something to bounce against, right? That we've seen it before. They haven't, which I think harkens back to a question or a point you made that I want to dive into. So smaller software companies, you mentioned using the right tool for the right job as part of AI. So, hey, should this be done in Python or should it be done with the When LLM versus Opus 4.7 or whatever, right? They have these names. 1, 2. Like I'm so tired of the names. But Kermit the Frog 7 or whatever. Small teams don't have that luxury though, because they probably know one language, right? They built it in something because they knew. They're a .NET shop, they're a Java shop, they're a Node.js shop, right? Now when you look at Diligence, so let's say 5 years ago, 3 years ago, there's no way we're going to do this in Rust. Right? I don't know anything about Rust. How do I know the team knows anything about Rust? How do I know the consultants know anything about Rust because it's so new? I'm paying a guy $2,000 a day that just learned it a week ago, right? But he knows more than me, so I think he's a genius, right? That's tough now in AI. If Rust is the right language, I'm not sure I need to be a guru in it, right? Because it's memory safe, it's super fast. Like there are reasons to use that architecture, but now with an LLM, I can probably generate a lot of that code, but like, how do you diligence that?
Yeah.
Like, so I thought Rust was a great thing for this. I don't know anything about Rust, but let's say I'm a good software developer, right? Like I'm not, by the way, folks, but let's say I was, right? That I knew good architecture, whatever. And that, Alan says I write crap, it's the easiest way to get engineers to write more product for you. You just write something yourself and they hate it. So they just redo it. It's perfect. It's a speed thing. It's an inside tip. So how do you guys look at that problem? Like, so you're right. I think we should use the right tool for the right job, but is that a safe thing to do with these smaller companies that don't have the expertise?
I think it's a multifaceted question. On the one hand side, right tool for the right job, yes, but realities do exist, and skill is a reality, right? And also size of the ecosystem or hiring market. Like Elixir, for example, is a beautiful language. Phoenix is a fantastic framework, and did a bunch of the Rails core guys. Our favorite framework is Rails, and also our internal software stack uses a lot of Rails. Which is great. It's a very token efficient language, but
you know how I feel about Rails, right?
That's okay.
I despise
nobody's
Rails
perfect.
All my
Jim, nobody's perfect.
Oh, I'm far from perfect. Trust me. And you're in the homeland of Rails, right? Because Basecamp is here.
Yeah, exactly.
DHH is here.
Yes,
you
sir.
can go by if you want to do the whole thing at the
Exactly.
Put flowers at the doorstep.
Exactly. So actually, we should come by. We're gonna here for another day. We need to just drop by the office for sure. Take a picture. So no. Right tool for the right job, yes, but realities do exist, including skill set, including size of the ecosystem, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, AI made the explainability of code much easier, right? So, and the third point is agentic development was a buzzword until end of last year, but now it's kind of real. And the step change was Opus 4.5 or so, end of last year. And to give you just an example from our daily business, at Code & Co., we use agents for development too. And we do nothing else every day, all day than auditing companies, right? So last year we did probably like 200 DDs. This year we hope to double it. And so we see a lot. And we also see a lot of the current trends, right? I think not that many companies yet leverage agentic development. So that's a huge value creation lever.
So split that for a second. That's a really good point. Split it between when can you say, they're basically doing agentic development? Because this is not like, it's not a binary thing. It's a bit of a roadmap, right? Maybe they're just trying open spec to start, putting some guardrails. Like talk about how you would evaluate that maturity. This is a great one. I would love to put you guys in phone booths for this one because I bet he's doing. I want to hear your answers to this because it's going to be. Now we're going to fight. Now comes the brawling. Okay, right. So explain to me explain to me what that level is.
I think firstly, it's a moving target, right? Last year, just having GitHub Copilot or Cursor as an IDE was fantastic, right? You had this little sidekick that helped you write the non-fun bits, tests and stuff like that, right? And today, agentic development means there are agents that when you go to sleep, they write code and you wake up to a pull request. However, these things are like PhD interns. They're super smart, but inexperienced, I guess, right? They need very, very good guidance. And let me walk you through an SDLC example that we do every day at Code & Co. For our internal software suite. And we use Slack for internal comms, and someone reports a bug in our internal software. So I write a message in Slack, then an agent that we call Draft Punk, because we're engineers and we like stupid puns. Draft Punk picks up the ticket or a message and moves it over by MCP to Linear and creates a ticket. This ticket has acceptance criteria. It has, steps to reproduce, actual result, expect results,
Hold on, your own MCP server.
Yes.
Okay.
So
I just want to make that clear.
Then another coding agent reads through the ticket. It goes back and forth with a little product agent, and they align on a strategy. Then the coding agent actually writes the code, opens a pull request, GitHub Copilot and Claude, and there's different, we talked about the weird naming convention stuff. There are also different coding agents you can use. Some of them are more pricey than others. There's one that's super fancy that we don't always use because $20 per review, so it's insane. And others, and for other use cases, we just use it for
just listen to the words you just said though. $20, it's insane to review this whole code.
Well, just for one pull request, right? One pull request.
But if you do it like me, you just make sure that pull request is huge.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Really big branches.
Pull request maxing. I like it. Got to be capital efficient. That's token efficient.
We are going to do it. We are doing an episode for PE partners on what a pull request is. So I want to have you guys on that episode to translate it.
Happy to.
Just think of it this way: somebody writes the code, somebody else has to look at it.
Yes,
for now,
sir.
That's good enough.
So new code is shipped to GitHub via a pull request, and then code is reviewed. And that's the fascinating thing. Now you see line by line code reviews. Not a human writes those comments, but GitHub Copilot and Claude, right? And then we wake up in the morning, Andrew, our fantastic CTO, he wakes up in the morning, or his colleagues, they wake up in the morning, they review the code's contributions and tell the AI, no, this is not a pattern we follow. Or because these things are prompted to write more code, as one example. They're not prompted to write ideal code. So we had this instance where instead of just editing an action in a controller, it just duplicated basically a controller. It was just a whole waste of code, right? So, and then the beautiful thing, and this is where we like to see companies that truly embrace AI as a best practice today, and maybe it's a moving target, right? So 6 months from now, maybe it's table stakes, is that you tell the AI where it went wrong, right? So you go back to configuration files in Claude and so forth, and tell it, no, based on your comments, based on the review of the code's review, or coding bot's review, you tell it, this is how we write code, this is the stuff we don't want you to do, right?
Yep.
So what I'm trying to say is, as a very long form example, thank you for bearing with me, is it's a moving target. 6 months, 12 months ago, it was just having a sidekick that takes care of some code, and was fantastic. Today, it's agentic development. But the agentic development bit is not just letting agents write code, because then it's going to be a terrible code very likely, but having this human in the loop process that ensures quality, those guardrails. And I think that's the essential bit that we like to see, or one of the essential bits. And then obviously there's model governance, AI security things. How do you prevent that when you use AI in features, that the model drifts so it becomes less accurate over time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, right? There's lots of things to look at, but ultimately it's back to the function of, do we have confidence in the team that they can improve and they're willing to improve? And given agents are team members these days, you need to guide them and give them guardrails so that they can improve.
I think also it's like a good example of when we started 10 years ago and developed our own stack, right? And continue to do so today. It was the right decision, because in the end, it's like, this is how we stay sharp, right? Because
of course, yeah.
We work with AI on a daily basis ourselves, right? This means technology has always moved very fast. Now it just moves faster and faster and faster. That means if you really want to be able to audit this, you need to stay ahead by also working with it on a daily basis, right? So I think if someone would have told us like last December that there's going to be like this automated draft punk, we probably wouldn't have believed it, right? So this is like how fast this all develops, right? So just pushing the boundary, being able to also just experiment, I think for teams is really important. And I think it's super interesting, because if you look at it, there's like this whole Wild West moment right now, right? Where you're just trying out stuff, experimenting, right? So for instance, last week when actually I'm back and writing features as well for our internal tooling, played around a lot with like context engineering, right? Giving the agent actually the context around what do we actually do as a company, who's our user, who's actually working with the software, right? This actually improved the results dramatically. So I think it's really cool to not just like, reading the fourth book about agile development and then suddenly just implementing what has been around for like 30 years, right? But it's something that's truly being shaped as we speak. And therefore you can also be one that co-shapes this by just trying out stuff and see what sticks.
I think what I remember when we met Kirby in 2020, right, in Kansas, you not only, we did this, the workshops, etc., and then we asked you for restaurant recommendations because we were there as tourists as well, right? So we spent
Kansas
some time.
City. It's barbecue central.
Yes, sir. It was. You give us.
Hold on. You have to be careful. At Kansas City, Kansas, or Kansas City, Missouri.
The workshop was in Kansas City, Kansas, but then they went to Kansas City, Missouri, where the culture is.
There you go.
I have friends who live in both, so I knew that was a good trap when you hit it exactly right.
and I remember that actually when we met afterwards, we spoke, gave us restaurant recommendations, and then you asked us, you were like, "Hey guys, how do you work?" And you kind of saw that we were like, not using PowerPoint or Google Docs for notes, but an internal system, and because when we founded Code & Co. in 2016, we said, look, we love working with smart people. We love being at the forefront of innovation. We love getting paid to learn. It's a great position to be in. We don't like consulting. We hate PowerPoint, right? We want to make sure that we have a process in place that's scalable and that's fun, right? So I remember that when
the good news, I think Germany just announced that they're going off office and back to Libra. So I think that was this week. So yeah, they don't like it either. The entire country hates PowerPoint.
Very true.
I agree, by the way. I hate PowerPoint. I hate SharePoint worse. But
So I would take a yes and to that. Whenever I'm thinking about how people are moving into agentic coding, to me, a lot of it's the leadership and the organizational maturity. At Code & Co., we're aligned with leadership, and then you see a very practical way to get to that human-in-the-loop system that Dan walked through was not overnight.
Of course.
You had to experiment, and always be learning. But inside of companies that I'm seeing, there's this already embedded workforce, the engineers. They're hearing from somebody like, oh, you guys won't be relevant anymore. And what we're saying is the engineers are even more relevant because it's an asset if you can keep it. And if you give a token max and give me this like massive vibe coded app, but we can't debug it, we can't actually use it, it's not truly an asset. And so the teams that are experimenting, kind of easing into the water, it's like, great, automated testing. That's a really nice way to kind of start to ease in to using agentic coding. And then once you're truly feeling it, moving into a more advanced system like Dan described, to me is how I'm seeing people moving, from, I'm just going to over here using a co-pilot to truly having a system inside an organization.
Yeah. Okay,
so you want to have
one
think
point,
systems,
I've got 3 points from all of you, which is perfect. So I was going to ask you the same thing. I think that's right because when we do due diligence, right? I don't know how, because, you would know it from me. I don't know how they do it in Germany, but, dental work here. When you go to the dentist says, do you floss? And you say every day. And he knows you don't. And you don't. It's a lie. That
he's like, I can see it.
Yes.
It's the evidence.
And that's the code coverage.
Yes.
And test coverage is every portfolio company. If I say, what's your code coverage
percentage? And for the record, we do floss too in Germany.
I want to verify that in the diligence.
So they start saying 95%. And then I go, really? Okay, it's 80.
Yeah.
Come on, guys. And it's usually 30. I agree with you that the simplest point, if you don't know what you're doing in AI, one of the easiest things to do is to start doing test coverage. I think it's right. I mean, are you starting to see that from a company realizing that that's something they should do? Or is that like light dawns over Marblehead when you tell them?
And it used to be, what's your automated test coverage? Okay, easy value creation item. It's going to create efficiency. And now it's like, okay, well, how are you actually tooling that test coverage? So testing is a very easy way to ease into it. Bug fixing is an easy way to do it. So where we started, so Dan's talking about this system, it started with baby bugs. Now it's taking bigger features because you have to tune it. And part about is tuning the system. It's also about tuning a mentality. And that's where when the engineering team is doing that, they're also identifying what is important to their coding style for their particular code base and a little bit more of a leadership development plan. You can't just have principal engineers running the company. It's a legacy risk. And so how you're bringing junior developers in, training them on those ways, making sure that their skills they don't have atrophy there.
Sure.
That to me is like more of a leadership decision on how you bring in agentic coding.
I think that this deeply resonates. I think this is important. And I think it's funny that it's a controversial take likely. Everybody says junior devs are dead. We don't believe that. Like if you're young, if you're hungry and you're as a human, growth mindset wise, you're as AI native as it gets. You're willing to experiment. You're willing to change your ways of doing things and or be challenged because you're new to things. I think you can be super valuable to organizations. And obviously you need the guidance from more experienced engineers too, right? So
that's the problem.
Older engineers or more experienced engineers are certainly also not, ready for retirement, right? They need to be part of the team. But I think we can be fairly, constructive and glass half full here. It's the combination is going to be a winner.
The thing, Dave Kellogg, who's an old friend of mine, we started in tech support together. He's a very famous marketing guy. And so one of Dave Kellogg's standard points is a Disney world parking attendant gets more training than your average dev or sales rep at a software company. And I think that's true. I agree with you. I don't think junior dev is dead. I think though, none of our organizations that we see are really set up to really mentor the next generation in through this stuff, right? And that's part of the problem is you gotta have a game plan for that. Because again, I agree with you. The older people that have the institutional knowledge and the why we did it the way we did it, like you can capture some of that with AI, but it doesn't mean you can solve that problem. You need to train the under people below, because we've all seen code where you've got comments like, you can't take this line out. None of us are sure why. Exactly. Just don't do it. Right? Like, hopefully we're not hitting those anymore, but there's still some of that only somebody who's been around for a long time knows. Now, Lucas, I want to, so this is funny. Now this is a little bit of like tech person to pure tech person. I'm doing the same thing. We're writing code here at Parker Gale that we haven't done in years. Like, part of the podcast stuff we're doing because I don't have time to learn the low level languages, but it lets you get back into the actual code, which is really interesting, I think. Yeah.
No, I think that's great. Also, I think people like us that used to work very hands-on as a developer and then maybe stop for a bit, right? Are actually now, this is amazing, right? Because you know exactly what to prompt and how to do stuff, like on a high level architecturally, but you don't have to do like the low level, like actually typing it out anymore. So I think it's really cool. And this is something I think also going forward, how teams will actually be co-staff, that there's people that are potentially, higher up that continue to then actually productively produce stuff, because it's less work just to do it yourself than to explain it to someone, hoping that they understand what you mean, right?
Yes. So now it becomes, how I think that product management is going to be huge on a go-forward basis, given AI, right? Both from how quickly product management can turn around things into, we see way too many product managers that spend way too much time internally because it's easy. Right? And they just busy themselves with specs and stuff like that. Well, you don't have to, right? The key is talk to your customers. You can build stuff in front of them to say, is this what you mean? To your point of, do you understand? I'm explaining to you, I'm looking at this. If I built you this, would you do it? Would you buy it? And I think that's one of the things that wasn't available before. The second part of that is architecture. Architecture is always the challenge here. So how do we diligence architecture now, given that AI code, if you have the wrong architecture, if you just slop AI on that thing, you're going to turn that thing into like this giant money.
That sounds fun.
It's a blob of like, it's disgusting. So, and that's always the thing. I think architecture becomes one of those between software developers is always get out your pipe, get out your jacket with it's like a professorial thing, right? That's why all the arguments are so fierce. That's why I'm like, forget Ruby on Rails. That's ridiculous. But for the right job, it's like, how do you diligence architecture now, given it's so important if they throw a framework on this thing that is a disaster with AI? Like, do you find the customers are receptive? Do they understand that architecture is an issue? I mean, CTO probably does, but maybe the board doesn't, or maybe the management team doesn't understand. They're locked into some kind of architecture that's hard to break out of.
So I'll answer your question briefly, and then I'd like to hear the team's thoughts. We were in a meeting yesterday with a firm, and we met with several firms in New York, clients and customers, and one of them said, I want to make sure in the diligence that their architecture can actually support proprietary data and AI growth. And Dan said, you have one of the more advanced views of the firms that we're meeting with because you actually understand that. And so I think it's going to make a difference in firms that understand that architecture is important.
I agree.
Because one, scalability, we could find a red flag in scalability just by looking at the performance reports, but fixing the architecture and then also fixing it for what problem they're truly trying to solve, to me becomes more of the problem to explore there. But I don't know, what do you guys think?
No, I mean, I agree. But I think realistically also not every company suddenly can or needs to be AI native, right? Like there are companies in regulated industries, there's production adjacent manufacturing ERPs or quality management systems and CPQ and whatnot that's still not even run in the cloud, and they can't because you integrate with machines, and the people are there anyways in the factory to put the wood in the machine or whatever, right? So I think you always have to make sure you look at the sector, you look at the sort of realistic expectations of what's possible, also legally. I mean, if you look regulated industries, fintech, for example, right? We've done a ton of credit decisioning engines, and of course they would love to use large language models and transformer architectures for stuff, but they're just not allowed to because you need to have deterministic stuff. Everything needs to be auditable. Everything needs to be versioned. So if you want to buy a house and they say, no, dear Jim, no mortgage for you, and you sue them 5 years later, they need to be able to roll back to the model and the algorithm back then, feed it the same parameters, and it needs to give you the same outcome, because otherwise it was not deterministic, and it was just and there's grounds for complaints and stuff.
We've got a TechCast episode coming up that we just did a quick demo script to just show how it'll start going off the rails on a simple question, because they are not deterministic, and that is one of the most difficult things we have explaining to people who are non-technical, the difference between deterministic and not deterministic, right?
Okay, well, let's look at that question from a different point of view. I answered from a buy side, like a doom and gloom mindset. We also work on the sell side and everything in between. Sell side work right now is where architecture has been most important to help explain why it's valuable.
Yep.
We're working on a project right now. They've built a beautiful ETL process. And inside
extract, transform, and load for you
thank
data
you.
warehousing folks.
But with this, they're talking about all their assets for these proprietary models. But we said, you're missing this huge piece. It's very hard to do. LLM can't just create architecture that's scalable on the fly. This is an asset. We need to highlight this and explain it in a way that non-technical people can understand that this is a moat. This is strong. So I think that on the sell side, architecture is a thing that's become more now front and center. Like, this is hard to do.
Let's talk about one piece, because I think that's interesting. We haven't talked about some of the mechanics of diligence, right? So there's two things that I think are interesting from our perspective. We're starting to see hey, let's do our own diligence on our own companies before we take them to market, right? That's why not? We can be prepared to be ready to go to market. Well, why don't you? Because oftentimes the PE world, where we tend to do it on the finance and back office sides on all of our companies, like our associates are machines, so they tend to be all that ready, and then everything else in the organization is like, oh yeah, we're going to go side. We probably do a better job of, because you're sort of doing the day-to-day job. You're not really kind of, but we think that's a new market. We think that people should be bring people in and say, look, I won't mention because we're on the other side we're on the buy side a lot too. And I've had diligence firms on the other side, the large ones that hire, they don't have a bench. So they hire somebody for the particular diligence, and that person, all they're trying to do is impress the guys that they're doing diligence for. So everything's an issue. It's like, what'd you write this in? C. Really? Come on, right? That's literally patently ridiculous. They don't really understand. So, but we're finding that to prevent that, we want to go into diligence, knowing, because you guys were involved in the BizCom diligence. You remember how long that ran. I mean, when we saw, I see you on the buy side, on the sell side, 3 months of tech diligence. 3 months, because we had other stuff going on in the deal, so they just kept going back for more and more questions. Right? It's this issue of it moved so fast that we weren't we didn't go out to market. But from that, we're kind of looking at going out to market. Do we diligence ourselves before we go?
So our buy side work has shifted left. We're starting pre-LOI. We're getting involved in conversation.
Oh, I thought you meant liberal or social.
The sell side work has shifted left even more. And if you think about like a house, where you would fail on a sell side is you say, hey, Code & Co, come in here, help me sell my house, make this asset look more beautiful. We've got 2 weeks. And I'm like, okay, you could put new curtains up, maybe put some new couches in there, but overall, the technology component's in the basement.
Right.
And we need to look at this 12 months out, and maybe it might be great, but you don't have telemetry involved. Like, you're not actually tracking, proving the value of this asset. And so us working 6 to 12 months out on the sell side just to make sure that if there is something to fix, they have time to fix it.
Right.
Or if it's truly valuable, how can we just spend the time to really craft the best story? So that's my point of view.
I think also there's a very interesting aspect. I mean, obviously, yes, there's the document, and then you do the work yourself, you prepare the team. Also, I think it's like, realistically, you're going to sell a company potentially to the next sponsor, right? That has a different angle for the next 5 years. I know there's like 5 or 6 PE firms looking at the asset at the same time, right?
Yep.
You want to make sure that you shield the internal tech team as well, because if every one of these 5 or 6 companies has like workshops with your tech team, they're not going to work for 3 to 6 months, right? So it's something. If you actually do vendor work on the tech side too, you actually first of all prepare the team. You make sure that you can actually fix stuff if you do it early enough. But then also you become like the first line of defense, right? So if there's like in the first phase, all 6 want to have like a first session about technology, then we can step in. We can do this in a first instance, and only like the 1, 2, 3 preferred bidders that go to the later rounds then potentially get access to the company itself, right? So I think it's also from that point of view really good to do, not just by looking at it early enough. But our goal also in the mid to long run is actually to have a continuous due diligence where DDs don't just become this one-off thing, but you continuously DD and improve a company. So you don't really have to do vendor DD. Just by doing this, you can click a button and say, okay, now I can export the point in time, the fact book, and then this is the vendor DD. So it's not like a non-event, like a deployment should be a non-event, right? So
also, let's face it, no one does DD because they want to, right? It's a thing you have to do in order to partner with someone like Jim, right? So you want to make sure that I think it's an important thing to do for the aforementioned reasons, right? You de-stress the process. You have smart people that act as the first line of defense, so the team is not distracted. They have better things to do with their time. But also, I think most importantly, there's also a coaching element here, right? So you are challenged, and given we're in an industry of constant change, and as discussed, the rate of innovation, rate of change is only accelerating now, and it's fantastic to be challenged, and this is why I think we're quite bullish on this idea of remaining involved. We work from pre-LOI to post-exit and everything in between. So our, early signal discovery as part of Lightning, signing with SPA, and then, exit readiness and vendor activity. And in between, we do add-ons and such, continuous assessment. So we do like portfolio monitoring. And we like it because we get to see so much, and we get to challenge them and they get to challenge us, right? So it's a very mutually beneficial relationship. And it just makes that, thing you have to do, DD, a non-issue suddenly.
Yeah, I think the parts of it some years ago, people started doing, allowing automated code analysis against code bases. Like, when we started, there's no way. I don't care if you were the last bidder or whatever. You're not getting to see the code of any. They'll talk you through stuff, but now it's like, oh yeah, we'll give you access to our repo. You can run, your favorite, SEMA or whatever else you want, Black Duck against it, right? To us, like, that's the thing you do on an ongoing basis, right? So you should have everything. We have a lot of our customers on a lot of portfolio companies on Vanta. I don't care what you do it in, but you have all your cyber stuff ready. You have all your proof points. You have all your code analysis. You have your open source licensing. If you cover all that stuff, then the diligence is really about strategy going forward, not looking for red flags, right?
100%.
Yeah, it's our house view that what code scans are actually not a good use of time. It's more so the things that you can put together from seeing the code, and also the systems that inform the code. So it used to be like, I could look at GitHub and I can see the contributors.
Yes.
But someone goes, with AI coding, we're much more efficient. It's like, okay, well now we have to look at what was going on in the contribution, how many of those were actually defects, like they got rejected, and then also is that person just only using, let's say Anthropic, look at their account to see how much they're using, and they're not actually doing any real coding. Now these factors help us understand better what's going on as opposed to just looking at that. But
we also look at the, you're all young enough that you've lived in a GitHub world, a Git world. I was in SVN, CBS.
We still see a lot of SVN.
CBS, I've been in a lot of these.
True.
So, but that was always the quick just show me your check-in logs. And we don't have any single points of failure. I see that 90% of check-ins are Fred, so I'm pretty sure you do, right?
Lucas wrote 98% of the code.
Right, exactly. Let's talk about the lightning diligence here for a second. So what I'm looking for from you three, and I would really love to put this in soundproof booth for this. So you can pretend, but maybe do this or something. Right. So what are 2 or 3 things, both good and bad? So if you quickly are scoping out diligence, you see some things and you're like, okay, if I see these 3 things, it's probably going to be pretty positive. Now we're talking about going forward. If I see these 3 things, I know we're dead, right? So I don't want to go first. You look so eager to answer this one, Dan, so I'm going to let you go first.
All right. Again,
conceptually, it can be conceptual.
Right. Again, really depends on the company, the sector, and all that stuff, and really, what we can find. But there's a couple of things that stand out. Like, for example, career pages are a really good source of information because you usually put the tech stack there because this is what you're hiring for, right?
Right.
So, and this gives us signals on when our client says, it's always ultimately, is there a disconnect or a match between our client's investment thesis, right, and what the company has to offer?
Yes.
And if the fund says, look, we're all about cloud and multi-tenancy and AI nativity and whatnot, and then we see, Delphi and as a stack they're hiring for, or we see, there's desktop deployment. And that's a reality still,
Object Pascal is still something. I don't care what you say.
It's true. It's not dead. It
should be. Delphi should be dead. It's been handed around so many times, like everybody's owned it at this point.
Right. But you can already see there's a bit of in tech we would say cold smell, right? There's a bit of a smell when it comes to disconnect between investment thesis. So what do I want to do as part of with this investment versus what can I offer as a company? That's point one. Point two, we really like to browse the web for signals, such as if you look, Reddit is the weirdest source of information, but for whichever niche topic that exists, no matter how small the niche is, you do find some information there as an example, right? And if there's people...
yes, you do.
And if there's people that just complain about, I don't know, performance gaps or bugs here and there, this gives us another smell, right? Or on the other hand, if you look at customer feedback, like G2, Capterra and the likes, and people just rave about the software. We did a dev tool recently. Man, people freaking loved it. It was like every single user seemed to be an advocate about this thing.
Dev tool?
Yeah,
really? Wow. Because most times they don't.
100%,
Like dev tool is like
100%.
Yeah.
We were blown away. Like we were so excited to start the DD, and because we were like, guys, like this is a winner. I can tell you that already. If devs, who are the most difficult to please audience on the freaking planet, if these guys love you, this is interesting.
Come on, the private equity partner would be the most difficult person to please, and my wife. Those two things are probably the most difficult person to please.
I think it's important also that we clarify when we say lightning, it's a fast engagement that's only with outside information or limited access.
Yeah.
Maybe one interview, something like that, because it's not fast whenever we're actually in diligence in the depth piece. But to us, I think the other area that I would call out is that when we're doing lightning, it's really whatever you can find for the type of company. And so when Dan was talking about raving reviews, one that I've really liked that we found people complaining just about latency. And it started to help us understand a little bit more about what was the stack and also what was the CEO. So we have no tech debt, we don't have performance issues. Like we're seeing something right here. And then we start to kind of put these, like a journalist would put something together to make a story even before going in, just to inform the diligence. Another one that we worked on that I thought was interesting was saw feedback that the software was slow. Went through their API decks. We found a minor security issue was less about security and more about the sophistication of the team. And then we had a brief conversation with a senior engineer there and basically learned out that everyone there was self-taught. And it's not a bad thing. Things in technology can be fixed to that, but it helps us understand, okay, well, what does that hiring plan need to be? What's actually impacting the conversation with IC and the financial model? When we're doing that pre-LOI, it's very helpful.
Yeah, and we're gonna see that mess, Kirby, because the mess we're gonna see is that all essentially untrained devs with no architecture building something. It may look like a pretty good product. It's just not. It's going to be a Jenga. That's going to be horrifically hard to both one diligence and that. Most of the time you shouldn't go into a deal, in diligence, not being prepared for. Hey, we think. I want to know what you guys think, so I know where to focus. I'm not expecting it to be a no deal, right? Because why would I get that far? Why do I spend all this money? I should have gotten to the lightning thing to say, you know what, this isn't for us. We should just move on.
And sometimes it validates the thesis. There was a thesis where it say, hey, we think that their product management could use more formalization, maybe better engineering leadership. And I said, yes, because I just found this comment on Glassdoor from 2 years ago that's just roasting the team. And it patches this comment and this comment that's kind of intermixed between all the positive stuff. We say, okay, well, this is an area where you can just start to build out these narratives.
I think also this team culture thing is really big, I think, because if you see Glassdoor reviews that are not great, and then not just one, but a pattern there, that's probably not a great sign, right? Because in the end, then this means there's some friction that at least needs to be looked at deeper in the future. I think great documentation used to be a good signal, a positive one.
Yeah, I agree.
Nowadays, you can just churn out documentation, right? We see more and more a Claude decks where you can definitely tell,
slap.
right?
Yeah.
So this is so this is something that's harder to diligence now, right? Because it's just easy to create stuff. So I think this is a signal that used to be very positive. Now it's very hard to tell, right? A very concrete example, more like a technical one, where I think this is probably not a great sign. If you still use, for instance, jQuery in 2026, right? This is like a technology that was already 10 years ago, not the hippest one. Doesn't necessarily mean it's bad per se, but
it did a lot of work for us in the old days.
Right?
So
No, exactly.
this way you go.
No, exactly. I love it. It's still.
It should be retired.
Exactly.
I get it, but
Paul
peace.
Irish,
Yes.
But it's I don't think it's like I said, it's not bad, but it shows that the team doesn't necessarily keep up with stuff, right? And this is a mindset thing again. That's most important than ever, right? That you really are interested in trying to potentially do stuff better, right?
We saw
funny.
a sim.
It's actually just one quick comment. It was funny. I know what you're thinking about because we had a DD quite recently. The IM said we use top state-of-the-art front-end technologies, and then it mentioned jQuery as a first big logo, and they're like, Could also be an issue in translation that the banker just didn't, what
Right.
was new or not. But
Oh,
it
it
was
sounds
just-
good. It's Jane. It's query. It sounds
But,
great. Yeah.
but there were a couple of screenshots in
Exactly,
our
yeah.
intro chat. We found it funny. It's like, hey, nothing. I mean, not to dunk on jQuery.
No, yeah, we've done a ton. Yeah.
It used to be amazing,
Yeah.
but it was just kind of funny that
We saw a sim that said cutting edge technology stack, and then they had Heroku on it. And we're like, well, why is that in the sim? That was like, so I.
Well, there is that disconnect between bankers, right? So
Yeah.
bankers are trying to put to them, at one point, Heroku was something everyone,
This
we
is
should
hot.
do that. It's hot.
love
And
it.
so they don't really understand what's hot and not anymore. So they're going to throw as many logos in as they can. Again, that's the pre-diligence, right? If you're selling to somebody who doesn't really understand the details of that and is buying the business because they like the end market of customers, they may not understand the technology. They may not care. They may not know. But that's what we're trying to get to is we care because it'll affect what do we do with the business.
Yeah.
I think this is why we do sell-side work, right?
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
why you should
exactly
do
why
it.
you
And I
sell
mean,
side work.
you're technical, right?
Right.
You know these things. Most people don't. That's perfectly fine, right? But this is why sell-side work is relevant.
Yeah, I think another.
They don't trust me to do that work anymore.
We had to
you guys know
we had
that.
to clarify on that disclaimer that Heroku is a firm that's not supported anymore. And so like it's a tech debt item.
Yeah.
It would slow down some things. So as part of that, like would be the translation layer as to why you wouldn't do that.
I mean, I think also we talked about this earlier. Like test coverage, I think is more important than ever because
Yes.
if you don't have any test coverage, it's only manual testing. This implies that you're potentially not far ahead when it comes to AI stuff, right? So because if you let agents loose on your code, this only works if you have like a really good regression testing suite to make sure that whatever the agent just didn't break the rest of it, right? So I think this becomes more and more important, and it's really like an indicator of okay, this company likely doesn't have a good AI maturity as well.
Or they've gotten too close to look, we all have an LLM we like, right? Let's just be fair, right? I mostly work, in Claude, usually not the latest model just to save a little money, whatever. But I've noticed it's picked up my bad habits because I was lazy about writing test coverage. It's gotten lazy too, with me. He's like, I think I've
You should be the
affected it.
sidekick. Come on,
I
help
thought
me.
I think it should be a better sidekick, but it's not. I think I've drawn him down to my level. We don't need.
Claude
Yeah,
down.
exactly. Yes, I've got
They're like,
exactly.
we've seen some issues. We think it's this guy in Chicago that's
Yeah.
just ruining the model.
It's 100%. It's 100%. It's getting snarky with me. I've also noticed it does get snarky. It's like
I've noticed that too, actually.
Yeah, it's like, oh yeah, no kidding, it broke. I'm like, oh really? You're the one who suggested this piece for me, not me. All right, so last question, bonus round. You ready?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want the craziest diligence stories with no names you've ever had. It was a crazy diligence because it went great, it went terrible. There was some. I will tell you. Here's a good. I got sent by my boss once. This is many years ago to a particular customer for a 2-week implementation, and the CTO had Tourette's.
Oh,
And it was the craziest 2 weeks of my life. And I mean, just would burst out whatever. The funny part was by day 3, I didn't even notice it. And he would literally be swearing at me in the middle of, like talking about some code base, how we're going to install us, whatever. And but it was literally the craziest 2 weeks of my life.
I mean, confession time. I shouted code bases too, right? So I can
have to,
relate.
right? Yes, of course, right? Because it's
No.
their fault, not ours.
I mean, we've done this for a long time, right? And so we've seen a lot.
I always wanted to write a book about it also. Maybe at some point we're going to do it. Like,
We're old and gray, and it's a privilege to do what we do, right? So we see very, very good stuff, and we see also maybe not so good stuff. I think the first takeaway should be: is it within reason, right? Can it be fixed? Sometimes, and I'll give you two similar examples. We once looked at an ERP that we actually terminated for 2 different clients within 15 months.
It was a commercial ERP or they wrote their own?
It was their own.
Okay.
It was a custom ERP that said their claim to fame was cloud and every sector, and you can like configure your workflows and whatnot. We looked at, for the first client, this was early, like when COVID just hit. And we looked at the architecture and it was just, not ideally designed. It was super insecure, unsafe and stuff like that. So we didn't, it's a fairly quick abort. We saw many, like very, very hard to fix red flag, like architectural debt.
You're saying like bond level difficulty?
It was not great,
just
right?
just to insult an old ERP.
And then 13 months later, another fund reached out. And this fund, we knew what we were getting into, right? And actually the sales advisor actually didn't want us to work on this, but the fund was like, no, of course, we want the best. And I mean, not to toot our own horns, but they consider us the best. So they're like, no, we want the best. We want to work with Code & Co. It's like, great. And then we said, look, we know you guys from back then. And even then we said, there's many things you can do and can fix, right? So we gave them like a value creation plan. And we were like, 13 months later, let's just focus initially on the delta between what we learned back then and how has it changed and evolved over time, right? So we gave them the benefit of the doubt. Deal went along, and the night before signing, literally the night before signing, you know how in VDRs you get like email notifications every day? It's like 248 documents were uploaded to the data site and so forth. You click on, you go through the index of what's new, and everything was named perfectly, 1.2, 0.3, 0.4, 0.5, and then the name of whatever the document entailed. So quickly, glancing at the headlines and going through it. And then there's one document that just had like gibberish, like somebody like vomited on the keyboard, basically, just random characters and random string. Like, whoa. And if they had named it perfectly, I probably would have missed it, right? But honestly, and I saw it, I was like, this is weird. Clicked on it, and it was the pen test we had recommended 15 months ago, so they'd never done a pen test. And it was, as red as it gets. All the things we found in terms of architecture debt and cybersecurity issues were documented, and it was like, no, this is hard to fix. And it was hilarious, right? And
funny enough, like this pen test provider doesn't have like a red, green, yellow kind of thing, but they use bombs actually for highlighting stuff. There was like 3 bombs. Which
it was like a lot of bombs, man. It looked terrible. And then we reported our client who was actually on, I think, the Maldives or so on vacation. And I remember that his sunburned face, palm trees in the background. We're on a call, and he's super angry because it was the night before signing, right? And we just ruined his vacation. It was on a board, and the reason for it was not because it's not fixable, but because you lost trust in the other side, right? They obviously tried to trick us, I guess. Hey, we uploaded our penetration test. Your advisors didn't care or didn't see it or so, right? So, and ultimately, we're all in a relationship business, in a trust relationship business. The beauty of tech is this helps me get out of bed in the morning is most gaps can be mitigated, right? That's the fun part of this, right? But if there's someone on the other side who has proven to not be honest about this and try to trick you, that's not a good start to a relationship. That was a quick abort. Example one. And the other example is quite similar. And then I hand it over to the team is, I'm happy to give that story because one office was also my hometown in the Black Forest area, a small town. And it was funny. So this company, a very cool company, manufacturing space, they built a very specific ERP, CAD design kind of thing. And we did a workshop, and the workshop was literally a history lesson on the development of computers, right? Starting with like calculus and whatnot, and how everybody went wrong. Like the CTO was very, very opinionated. I think it was a fascinating presentation. I learned so much. It was like a history lesson, and we had to grab some popcorn and all that stuff. And his take was how everybody went wrong when it came to development of libraries and frameworks. So he built his own framework, his own programming language, his own compiler and whatnot. So the whole stack was custom. It was closed source. We got access to it was not GitHub, it was something else, but whatever, the version control platform or source code hosting platform, and it was 9 maintainers. And that was like the mother of all key person risk, right?
Oh, good Lord.
And the funniest thing, again, a mindset thing, this is why I want to use this as a second example. It was not like, hey guys, we understand this is a bit exotic. We have a plan, a strategy, how we can mitigate this over time. It was more like, no, you guys are wrong. The whole internet is wrong. We're right? And this was, again, a bit of a trust mindset kind of issue that led to our client aborting. But that was 2 examples I had at the top of mind.
So just to show you how I think that era is gone, but I've had 2 of the exact same thing where the developer wrote the whole stack, like the whole programming language, like programming language for everything. It's like, and the same thing, they had an opinionated why. And in all cases, these guys were super bright.
Yeah.
But it's like, I could kill this company just by, buying the guy a good lottery ticket.
Because you need a 5 plus 5 year vision, right?
Yes.
Even if you have comfort with this, can you, with that team, and it's a massive 20-year-old code base, can you realistically build something new? Or do you just waste resources on maintenance, tech rejuvenation? So you lose the opportunities, right? So is this going to be interesting for the next investor? Likely not, right? So
I think what's your story? We have seen this multiple times actually, right? As well, it wasn't the only time where there was like a custom programming language. And I think in all of these cases, they had a pre-made presentation defending the reason why they have it, which shows you that they need to defend it, right? Because people always say, why do you do that, right? It's not like we're the first ones that say, it's not a good idea, right? So I think that's interesting that they already had this off the shelf, right? It's like the reason why we did this kind of presentation, right?
Why you're wrong, PP.
Exactly. So there was like, and then it's obviously hard to explain this to the the later you are in a deal, the harder it is to convince the investment team to abort, right? Because obviously you spend a lot of money, right? And you are very invested into that and a lot of time. So I think that's never a great discussion, but we don't shy away from it, right? So another example, I think it's great. We looked at a company, a very small company. It was an add-on for a large group we do a lot of work with in Italy. And there was a cool software stack, again, like another very specific.
Wait, from Italy? Really? Did Stanley Tucci figure it on his walking tour of Italy or something?
A very, very niche ERP. The workshop that we did showed case that they only had like 3 developers, but realistically they needed like 9 or even more, right? 2 of them were actually hired just recently, so obviously key person risk, but more important, there was a mismatch between how profitable the company should be, right? So the founder, obviously, that was great for him because he took out a lot of money over the years, right? But that means that on an ongoing basis, you need to triple the development team. Suddenly it's EBITDA negative, and then therefore also the valuation mismatch is too big, right? So that's something that we actually see oftentimes, sometimes even the other way around, where tech team is too big, right? Which is obviously something an investor then likes to see because it means that you can maybe buy something cheaper than it should be, right?
But that's the double CTO problem, as you know, Lucas. It's either they're so maniacal that they're firing somebody within the first 2 days if they're not up to speed, or we hired him. We'll find something for him to do at some point, right? And that's why you find these people who are. That was I won't mention the company. We had a developer working on something for a customer once, and when we called the customer, they've been working on it for a year. There's one developer on a feature, and the customer's like, no, we didn't want that. We said, no, we got the email. Like, we talked about it, but we didn't need it. And this one guy kept going, I think it meant I should be working on this thing. And literally,
that's cool. There's like the thing in old German companies when they do software, it's called the hotline, which is like, do you not have product management? But there's literally a telephone number you can call the developers, just ask for stuff, and then they just build it for you, right?
Good God.
That's Claude now.
Good God.
And that is like, I mean, obviously,
Then Claude picks up now.
I have a phone. I just call Claude. It builds things.
And then you can see how the software. You can imagine how the software looks like, right? It's suddenly like every customer can just wish for stuff, right?
Oh yeah, we've seen tons. Yeah. We've seen tons of those. I mean, our best product managers tend to show a really good roadmap. And then their customer's like, oh, I love all that stuff. And then they say, you can't get it unless you stop asking us for these one-offs that you don't actually need, right? Because I think oftentimes customers do think they need these one-offs, right? Why does that happen? Because we went through the ERP BS world where every ERP product had best practices. So you might as well adopt ours, right? Which was, are they? I don't know. For every business has their own unique, like a manufacturer, why do they customize the ERP system? In some cases, because they have to, because it doesn't match their business. Right?
I think also, Jim, what you said earlier, that like product management is more important than ever. I think this is
100%.
Exactly like because Claude is exactly the same thing. It will build what I ask it to build, right? So it doesn't necessarily mean that I should build it. So this step between I can now build everything, but I shouldn't, right? So really qualifying what you should build is more important than ever.
Right, but it'll become, and I'm not leaving you out of this, Greg, because I know you're ready to answer this question, right? No. But that's the other crazy part, which is a bigger topic for another day in terms of what I see happening is because you can build more stuff, are we going to get into a phase where we can do more customizations for the end customers of the software companies, right? I mean, I ended up writing my own exercise tracking application that I posted in the App Store. We did a video about it, not because it's a Goldilocks problem. I've been training a certain way for my entire life, and no app ever, now every exercise app on the App Store is some positive guy named Bryce trying to get you to do, forget it. I have my own, I just want to check the stuff off, right? But would I have wasted my time trying to do that 2 years ago? No, because I haven't written Swift. I mean, I wrote some Objective-C, but I'm not a Swift. Like I built the thing in a weekend.
You're a martial arts guy, right?
Yeah.
I was hoping you would do like a martial arts training app.
I did. It's out years ago. It was in the, and I'm redoing it. But it was in the Apple. It was called Wabi Sabi Kumite, and it was in the App Store for years. But I took it down to rebuild it because now it's like, well, now I can rebuild it. Yeah.
Do it.
Yeah, it was an interesting little exercise.
The fight for attention. That'd be cool.
It was interesting. It was an interesting app. I'll point out that way. But now I'm like flooding myself with that. But now we get to this problem of, I do think it's really interesting. Can software products themselves have pieces so we can customize by customer and still make it supportable? I think that's going to be crazy, but
fair point.
It'd be super interesting and hard to diligence, I think.
Yeah.
All right, Kirby, best and worst.
So I would just say I was going to go like most wild
Yeah,
diligence,
yeah, give us
and my answer be a little bit different. It's just
So you're kidnapped, thrown in the back of a van.
May your most wild diligence be the one of your own company that's getting diligenced. And so whenever we had sold our startup, it was an add-on. It was done not by Code & Co., but by another major US firm. And I got the chance to, you can't help but not try to sell in that, and also you're high integrity, but you also may have just written a business continuity plan last week and you're going to put it in the VDR and you're going to be there. But the thing that I thought was interesting is I now do this every day for a living. I'm passionate about it. At the time, I was just experiencing it. And I just saw what can happen, what can be missed. They did a code review. Our CTO, Travis, flashed the code on screen for 2 minutes. They said, code looks great, and moved on.
Well, so the colors were nice. It was indented
and I was like, sure, he picked a really hot spot to show them, and I was like, I did a demo, but then a part of it, was the demo in Sketch, Sketch at the time, Figma, was it live, and they're like, demo looks great. And so I had the chance to see the report 2 weeks ago. I was talking to, the firm in there.
2 weeks ago.
Yeah, it was 2 weeks ago. And we were having a conversation about, because I'm talking about Code & Co., how we're thinking different, like whatever. I read through it and I thought, man, this report sucks because it would have helped for some of the things we wanted to happen, like a better integration, like how we were going to try to come into the platform company to truly been in there. And so like that was one thing, but then it just made me laugh because it said, the co-founder, your least product is an above average product manager. And I said, well, okay, well, at least it wasn't just average.
Yeah, no, take it.
So I'll take it.
Take it. All right. Thanks as always, Funcast fans. Now, where can anybody who's looking for help find you guys?
We're everywhere. Our goal is to be on speed dial for all things tech, right? So we've been very, very privileged to work with many funds across the globe for a long time. Now we have, since April, an office in New York.
Yes.
Headquarters are in Berlin, Germany, and then we have presence in London and Paris. Team is distributed as a remote native organization ourselves, which is one of the beautiful things of technology. Tech is tech, and it's inherently global, right? So we've been, as you said, as you showed, very, very excited and privileged to work with you since 2021, I think.
2021, yeah.
And as such, how can you find us? Good. Find us on LinkedIn, find us via our website. Maybe you can even link our website in the speaker notes.
Oh, no, they'll be linked. You'll have a full page. So
amazing.
right?
Fantastic. And we're here.
Awesome. Well, thanks as always, Kirby, Dan, Lucas. It's always a pleasure to see you. Funcast fans, we'll see you next week.
Neither this podcast nor any of the information contained here constitutes an offer to sell or a solicitation of an offer to buy any security or instrument in, or to participate in any Parker Gale fund or other investment vehicle. Past performance is not indicative of future results, and there is no assurance that any Parker Gale fund will achieve its objectives or avoid significant losses. This podcast may contain forward-looking statements. Such statements are subject to various risks and uncertainties. Parker Gale is an investment advisor registered with the United States Securities and Exchange Commission. Registration with the SEC does not imply a certain level of skill or training. Guests appearing on the podcast may or may not be a financial sponsor of the podcast or an episode of the podcast. Parker Gale may have business relationships with certain guests, sponsors, or organizations mentioned during the program. In some cases, guests or sponsors may provide services to or receive services from Parker Gale, which creates potential conflicts of interest. Any sponsorship of this podcast does not imply endorsement by Parker Gale and is not provided in exchange for, nor intended to solicit, business between the sponsor and Parker Gale. The appearance of any guest does not constitute an endorsement or testimonial of Parker Gale or any fund. For additional information regarding Parker Gale, please refer to Parker Gale's website, www.parkergale.com, or Form ADV, available at advisorinfo.sec.gov.
From the heart of Chicago to all over the globe, couple private equity geniuses, they share what they know. They love to mess with technology where the future is sink or swim. It's the Private Equity Funcast with Devin and Jim. Technology issues and middle market PE-backed companies, they bicker with each other and they don't take themselves too seriously. It's not venture capital, it's private equity. It's the Private Equity Funcast. Pour yourself a drink and